Thanks all for coming. This is just, I kind of want to take a moment. It's now kind of 11 years into this journey, and this is so amazing to be here. Very humbling to be in the room with such amazing people, marketers, entrepreneurs, and so just want to say thank you for coming today. So this is a really cool panel, and the kind of theme is creator commerce, which I love because basically that means I can ask about anything. But I think when I was thinking about what really makes these entrepreneurs, leaders special is the kind of arc that they've seen this whole kind of creator commerce concept come to life, and with multiple companies and to great success. So, actually, I kind of want to start. Let each person kind of introduce themselves, talk about what they're working on, but we'll kind of jump straight into then after that about creator commerce.
Sounds good. Hey guys, I'm Melanie. I am the CEO of Rhode, which is a new philosophy on skincare founded by the incredible Hailey Bieber. And prior to that, I was founding president of Verse, and at Verse we made skincare for everyone, making it clean, accessible, and breaking down a lot of those barriers that were keeping people out. I've been in the beauty and fashion space for a good 15 years, and prior to that in sustainability, so love building brands that provide solutions, but also that stand for so much more than that.
Thank you. Mayur?
Hi, I'm Mayur. I'm CEO of CJ. CJ has been now around for 25 years. We just celebrated our 25 years this year, and we are an affiliate marketing and performance marketing platform. And just thank you for the opportunity today. Very excited to be on the stage. Thank you.
Yeah. Hey everyone, my name's Dan Reich. I'm a serial entrepreneur. I've started and sold a few different companies. Most recently, I was one of the founders of a company called Tula Skincare, which we sold to Procter & Gamble about a year or two ago. I think there's some Tula folks out here, so there we go. More recently, I started a company called DIBS Beauty, which is a color cosmetics company with Courtney Shields, someone I worked with at Tula. And then I, last year, also started had a software company called Troops, which we sold to Salesforce the same year we sold Tula to Procter & Gamble. So been keeping busy.
I'm very tempted to ask you a bunch of questions about software companies, but I think we'll keep it in the consumer space for today. But actually, I wanted to start with Mayur. You know, as you mentioned, you celebrated 25 years. It was CJ, or the 25th anniversary of CJ. And just thinking about that, doing the math there, it means it started in 1998, and how different the internet was then, and how to create a company, such a strong company with that kind of staying power, it requires a degree of basically being the future, creating the future. And you know, I've heard you talk before about specifically right now, the moment that we are in as the age of creators, which I obviously agree with as part of CreatorIQ. I think, but I'm curious though, specifically in the context of affiliate and performance marketing, what is the distinction in your mind in terms of being in the age of creators versus the kind of partnerships that have always driven the success in affiliate marketing?
I actually don't see that as much of a distinction, to be honest. And the reason for that is threefold. Number one, I think a lot of affiliate marketing's resonance with merchants, with brands, was driven by how affiliate publishers are bringing the audience or consumers that are looking for trusted sources of information, authentic sources of information, and creators like fit that persona, that principle, that philosophy so well. So in that regards, there is a reason why creators and affiliate marketing is having such a strong convergence, because consumers who are following creators and influencers are looking for that trusted, authentic information about a brand, about the products, and you know, wanting to try and use them. Second principle why I don't see really them that far apart from each other is brands, and especially direct-to-consumer brands, are always looking for financially savvy ways of engaging with audiences and using their marketing budgets smartly so that there is a strong performance element to it and they can tie back the activity transparently to sales, to commerce, to conversions. And I think that's another similarity. And third and most important one is consumers themselves, right? Like, you know, the the best part about any marketing and the best part about any direct to consumer brand is how you connect with consumers and do you provide a value that they are looking for. And not only direct to commerce brands are definitely providing something that consumers are looking for, but creators are the ones who are bridging that gap, that information gap, that authenticity gap. And I think that creates a true win-win-win situation, as we call it at CJ. And in that sense, there is tremendous amount of similarity, but also tremendous amount of opportunity. And that's why I truly believe this is an age of creator.
That's a great full answer in terms of how you kind of marry that past, that storied past of driving just direct conversion, but also now through the lens of the concept of trust that creators really build. And that was really why we started the journey to begin with, is just watching the content itself and realizing that this is amazing. Like, you have people with a different point of view and an authentic story to tell. I want to go to Melanie specifically on this question of how do you build a community that is authentic to your brand, and you have done this now very, very successfully at two separate brands. Maybe another way is, how has that been? Is there been a core strategy that's worked in both cases, and what's different in those two different experiences?
Yeah, and I think the community it's really the beating heart of any brand. And it's one thing for a founder or a brand leader to be able to articulate who you are, but what's far more important is that actually your consumer and your evangelist can. I think one of the really interesting shifts that's come over the last 5 years is that now as brands, so much more of our reach comes not from our own channels, but from the earned channels, and especially earned social. Something like 5 to 10x on a monthly basis I will reach through other creators and through my own platforms. And I think that just goes to speak of really the importance of being able to leverage those audiences and educate them so that they are carrying your message in a way that builds the strategy as a whole. One thing I've heard from a lot of brands out there, especially in the prestige space, is that they're actually pulling back on in-store education teams, on putting dollars there. And I think that's also because, ultimately the creators are stepping into that type of a role as well. And certainly you see it in even more direct channels with email open rates going down consistently, content engagement rates on a lot of channels going down. So I think really looking to that community as the single most important marketing channel, especially when you're in the early stages that I've been in, that year 0 through 4, I think is huge. And that becomes then a really interesting conundrum of how do I get 10,000 people to be on brand, on message, and really tell this story as well as I can. And I think that comes down to, two main principles. One is just really being thoughtful about how you're educating them, bringing them in, and really creating that experience for them so they are knowing your messages, they are understanding your key points, whether it's as your brand as a whole or as your product, that they're understanding that as well as you do. And I think one of the second things that's just really, really key and often overlooked is how important that adjacency is. Why is this creator the right person for you? What do they stand for? What do they speak to authentically? Why does their community go to them? Because not all creators are, I don't want to say they're all created equal, but they're not all relevant to the same principles. So it really needs to come back to, as a brand, what do I stand for and what am I selling? And you need to be that really intentional body in terms of figuring out who's right for you at the right time. And I think, really starting with fewer creators, being really selective about why this is the right person. You can always build and scale from there, but it's incredibly important that as you're growing by bringing new people in and pushing more messages out there, that it's all dialing back to this main hypothesis, philosophy, promise that we stand for as a brand.
I think the key there is just that authenticity and carrying that through. And I love that idea that, even though you're specifically working with creators to not actually tell your specific story in your words, that you still need to stand for something as a brand and have that actually translate through your partnerships. It makes a lot of sense. Now, so kind of very specific or famously, so you were able to reach #1 in EMV as a skincare brand, and that was very, very quick work as well. Dan, you also had a brand, Tula, that reached #1 in EMV, and I think, as you actually outlined this in podcasts with Connor, a lot of what your program was built on there was actually performance and ROI. I'm curious how you kind of think about the interplay of clearly a program that worked to get top of funnel awareness, engagement with the brand, but actually designed around performance of working with creators as well.
So I think the creator economy, the influencer economy is like the oldest form of marketing in the world. Like the first creator was the guy that ran out of the cave screaming he invented fire and told all his caveman buddies. It's the most powerful means of storytelling. And I remember years ago at another company called Spinback, we helped online brands and retailers measure how much money they're making from Facebook. And I remember one of our customers is a large retailer, and we saw an insane spike in sales. Historically, this retailer makes money whenever they're on television. And for some reason, we saw this huge spike in sales, and we couldn't really figure out why. And when we looked, there was this forum or blog buried at the bottom of a product detail page, and there was this like one mommy blogger that no one has ever heard about that drove many tens of thousands of dollars in sales. And that was one of the light bulb moments for me when I realized that these humans, with the advent of social media and digital media, now for the first time have a real platform where their voice can be heard and shared and spread really, really quickly, depending on the message. And so when we thought about Tula in the early days, we were very, very deliberate to lean into that as its own standalone channel. We always thought about influencers and creators as its own distribution channel. It's one thing to build a D2C brand. Everybody today can create a Shopify site, throw some money at advertising, and they think they're in business. That actually doesn't really work well. And this is kind of what we were just discussing. It's so core to build a community of evangelists and loyalists. And the only way you're going to do that is to have these relationships with these creators and influencers that could be pretty meaningful in size or pretty little in size. And so at Tula, we stood up a team and built basically a machine and methodology to go find many of these people. In the beginning, it was actually not in the beauty or skincare space. It was mommy bloggers, it was fitness bloggers, it was lifestyle bloggers. We wanted to go to where people were not. And we would have really great conversations with them. We'd gift them products. And then what we would allow them to do is earn money from promoting those products. So we would give them a discount code that they can offer their community. And then we would also let them earn a percentage of revenue for any sales that they generated. And we were very methodical in how we managed that, how we tracked that. We talked about this earlier, but for anybody that's in the SaaS world, I'm sure maybe your company has what's called an SDR or BDR team. So people are cold calling, cold emailing, nonstop. In a way, we kind of did something similar for outreach and influencer creator acquisition all the way through engagement and contracting and so on. And that really became a core engine of growth for us at Tula all the way through acquisition. And it's one that we're doing, quite frankly, again with DIBS, and it's proving to work well again.
I love that the idea of BDRs for influencer management. I kind of think about crossover in terms of lessons from the software world that you can apply, and what you were talking about earlier kind of ring true with like the actual measurement of things. These concepts of lifetime value and retention and everything like that apply so directly to influencer community. How do you think about that specific concept in your actual programming with influencers?
So I think the influencer channel, the creator economy, these are just human beings that are talking about your brand. And man, there's nothing better than having a group of people talking about a brand they love that's yours. That's so important to us. So in fact, to a bit of a commercial for you guys, even last week, we were having a monthly e-commerce meeting with the digital team at DIBS, and we were looking at earned media this month, as we do every month, and my question was, well, how are we tracking and ranking with Tribe and CreatorIQ? They didn't have the answer, they're gonna get it. But to me, that's important because it's a leading indicator for how we are faring in the broader ecosystem and competitive set. I think Connor showed this earlier in his talk for anybody that sees it, but there's a clear causal relationship between earned media and people talking about your brand with sales to follow. Like, that's just fact. So for us, it's really important to make sure that we're driving that engine always, especially when, and for any marketer in the room is probably dealing with this, paid media is going through the roof. Very expensive, changes in the platforms. It's just like, you don't know what you're gonna get. But what we always know to be true is so long as we have humans that give a shit about what we're doing and they talk about it, we should be in good shape. And the platforms and mediums might change, but that philosophy will never change.
I'll piggyback on this because you'll like this, John, but I'm in EMV typically weekly because to me, especially when you're in that early brand building stage and recognizing how important that organic influencer audience is, to me, that's just one of the most relevant ways to actually understand what's going on and to be able to contextualize it. I completely agree with Dan that again and again, I have seen that really tight correlation between spikes in EMV and spikes in sales. And I think it's even more compelling when you think about it as an indicator of longer term brand health. How are you doing year over year with EMV, and what does that mean for where you are in your growth cycle as a brand? I think one of the other interesting things that we've talked about is that while EMV is incredibly powerful, it's also can be a false flag when you don't have broader KPIs in place. I think a smart marketer will figure out how to game EMV in a way that doesn't always translate back to sales, whether that's selecting the wrong influencers, doing activations that are share-worthy but aren't meaningful in terms of the message they put out there. And I would say the same on some things on the paid side or on the boosted side that, again, are pushing up a lot of views, but it's not necessarily quality. So really also anchoring those same brand teams with performance KPIs or revenue KPIs. I'm a huge fan of that. I think every single body in the room at a brand should have a revenue KPI. And I think the other really important thing is to dig deeper into EMV and how much of it is coming from new versus returning, and what does that say about how you're bringing in new audiences, because a new creator is a new audience. What does that tell you about how long people are sticking with you and how loyal and valuable they are? Are they posting it once because they want to stay on your PR list, or are they actually digging into the product, using it, putting in their getting ready with me videos and creating content of value? So big fan of EMV as a whole, but as with any data point, it's only valuable if you know how to contextualize it.
Well, and I think contextualizing it specifically in the context of, does it actually convert customers, keep customers, engage customers? Probably the important piece there, right? Actually, that's kind of the perfect question for then Mayur. You know, how do you contextualize, you know, concepts like EMV, everything in the context of a very kind of performance-driven outcome where you're the king of being able to track conversion in every shape, way possible on every possible outcome, whether that's a mobile app download or a Shopify order. How do you think about, you know, EMV as a North Star, but then working in conversion as a KPI?
First, music to my ears. You know, it's great to hear and validate from CEO and founders of brands like performance and revenue KPIs is important, critical. It's obvious, but it's extremely validating to hear from folks who actually do this day in, day out. In making sure I don't nerd out here, to answer your question in the most easiest fashion, would be the first step is to have access to technology that allows you to get the data you need. Okay, that is always the critical step. Otherwise, you are not going to be able to measure what you really want to measure. And KPIs come in so many different forms, but you're absolutely right. Like, you know, it's not just overall revenue sales. It's also, is it a new customer or is it a repeat? What's the lifetime value? what is the AOV in general, right? And to be able to look at it not only from overall channel perspective, but also even from creator perspective, or from content categorization perspective, right? Like a certain type of creator content might drive more new users, new customers. Another type of creative content might drive significant repeat and loyalty customers to your brand. So having technology that allows you to truly track all of these facets and have data at hand is step one in my mind. Step two would be, then how do you use all of this data, not only in the silo of the channel you're trying to understand, but really coming out of that silo and looking at all the interactions, right? That's where I think the real fun and customer journey comes into picture. Some creator content might be driving a lot of demand to your site or to your products that is actually being converted, if you think of attribution, by another channel. Doesn't mean that that creator content didn't do anything. And in fact, if you look at a lot of those journeys, and you will start seeing that, every time I engage with a creator, all the credits that Facebook is getting for conversions, those conversions actually look better than other Facebook conversions, right? That actually having creator in the path is making email conversions actually become better. It's making search conversions become better. So is my marketing effort actually raising all the boats? And having that type of insight is as critical as well, or else you will only look at every channel from a perspective of, is it delivering an EMV or is it delivering revenue? But looking at all of those interactions is actually incredibly helpful. And then working with creators, finally, last step is, data and technology is only step one. Then how do you use that on a repetitive basis using platforms like CreatorIQ to then start thinking about which creators now I'm going to work with because of this, how often, how much I'm going to invest, and what type of content I'm going to work with them. So it all becomes very exciting and very powerful if you start by giving yourself access to that data.
I love that idea of very specifically the knock-on effect or supercharging of all of these different marketing channels as a core reason why you would work with creators. And maybe just in the interest of time, I'm going to ask our two founders here very specifically. Can you share an example of a way that your creator program has maybe supercharged another aspect of your marketing programs, and then what are the kind of expected or ways to measure that success for the audience?
Yeah, I can go. I'll give you two examples. The first is we would do events in stores. So with Tula at Ulta, we would have creators show up at store. We host events there, and guess what? A lot of customers wanted to come and be part of that event and engage with the creator. That's one example where it would enhance performance at retail. Another example at DIBS, we lean in very heavily into in-person events all around the country, and our plan is to have an event in literally every state. And why is this important? Well, by having these events, not only are we creating and facilitating real relationships between our brand and the customers, but relationships between those creators. And so what happens is we become a conduit for them building their business and building more meaningful relationships. In addition, at the events, surprise, surprise, they're all taking photos, they're creating their own content, they're sharing that content. That content creates a bit of FOMO for people not at that event. And so all of a sudden now we've just created a situation to capture and create more media and content that we can use on our paid channels, on our social channels, on our e-com site. And then that just perpetuates this flywheel of generating more interest for more creators. So it all goes back to, like, if you have people that care about your brand and you endeavor to work with many of them and find more of them, it has such an incredible, to use your words, knock-on effect for literally every single part of the business.
Yeah, I think so much of building a brand today is constructed around creators. I think two ways that I'm a big fan of. One is using it as content for your own channels. If you look at the top 5 or 10 performing beauty brands on Instagram or on TikTok, probably 80% of the content that they're posting wasn't produced by them. And it's because they know that algorithms and people like content that comes from authentic third parties. And the single best way and the single most cost-efficient way to get that is to partner with creators to produce it. So I'm a big fan of that strategy. And it also creates more shared incentive around producing awesome content. It creates an opportunity to educate those creators on here's the product, here's how we like to talk about it, while also giving them the opportunity to put their own spin on it, talking about product hacks, about why this is uniquely right for them. So a big fan of that. And then I think also just an incredible source of insights and building engagement in your brand as a whole. At Verse, we built a panel of 80,000 community co-creators who participated in some way, shaping product development, marketing programs, value propositions. And by inviting people in to, kind of join us at the table, tell us what you like, tell us what you need, tell us what you want, it let us tap into those earliest adopters who were going to be 6 months or a year ahead of the curve. And it also created that open dialogue so they knew that we were here to listen. And that created trust and buy-in so that they were some of our strongest evangelists down the line.
Well, I want to say thank you. We are unfortunately out of time. I could literally learn from the three of you all day long, and I've really enjoyed the conversation.
Yeah, thanks.
Everyone.
Thank you.